all eyes going into this big game, and quarterback's really a big part of this discussion, Gerhard. We heard from Kirby Smart about Ty Simpson's development. Let's take a listen to what he had to say this week as the Bulldogs gear up for this big one against the Tide.
Well, I mean, Ty's different than Milroe. You said it. So there's a difference in that, but he's a really good athlete. Like, he's a tremendous athlete. He played in games last year, and you watch all the snaps he took, and he has 60, 70, 80-yard runs that are, running down the field, outrunning good defenses. So he's a talented player. I would say he's probably the hottest quarterback right now in all of college football. His two last outings, I don't know that I've seen an incompletion. Like, the ball does not hit the ground. He's been accurate. He's been quick with the ball. They're really hard to defend because of their skill. They've got tremendous skilled receivers, backs, tight ends, but you got to have a trigger guy that can get those guys the ball, and they do. And he's seeing the field. I didn't realize, in the Florida State game, it was as messy and sloppy as the weather was at times. Like we were playing a game during that time, so I had no idea until last week. You go watch, and you're like, oh, okay, it was a rainy, sloppy game. In the other games he's played, there's been no sloppiness. I mean, he's accurate, he's quick with the ball, he's a good decision maker, and has made some elite throws. So they're clicking right now offensively for sure.
So a lot to unpack there from Kirby Smart, the head coach of the Georgia Bulldogs, as they gear up for this game against Alabama. And there's no question that when you look at strictly the numbers, what Ty Simpson has been able to do in Alabama's last two wins, most recently against Wisconsin, you still have to consider who it is that Alabama was playing in those games. Yeah. However, like we've joked on this show previously, it's difficult to go perfect like Ty Simpson did a couple of weeks ago, and then to go near perfect against a P4 opponent is pretty impressive.
Yeah, if you go to practices, 7-on-7 practices, where you're practicing against the air, it's hard to go 17 of 17 for a lot of these quarterbacks. You'll have a drop here and there. So it says something about both things. And Kirby Smart hit it on the head. It says what the trigger man is doing, being able to get the ball out there, but also his receivers catching the football. Simone, in his last two games, he has 5 incompletions and 7 touchdowns.
That's insane.
It's insane.
That is insane.
And so if it was just one game in a vacuum, that'd be one thing, but he's carried it over. You mentioned it. It's not two great defenses, but if he could do it against the Kirby Smart defense, not necessarily that level of production, but just carry that confidence and that execution into it, I think he gives Bama a really good shot.
Yeah, there's no question that this is going to be Alabama's first true, not their first true test in terms of competition, but their first true, a good just bar of expectation. What is Alabama really going to be? Of course, the Florida State loss, I have to disagree with what Kirby Smart said, but then we have to keep in mind that Kirby Smart is going to talk like the coach who's gearing up to play this team this week, because that's the same thing he's got to be telling his guys, which is, hey, take them seriously. Hey, this Florida State game, it was sloppy because the weather was sloppy. No, it was probably sloppy because there was no effort from the Tide for most of the game. Yeah. And guys like Kane Womack, that's what I'm saying. I mean, these coaches say the same thing. So a fire had to be lit, and it did, and it was. Will that go ahead and change things going into the SEC slate as we really get into the nitty-gritty? Because right now, nothing has really been lost with that Florida State loss. And by the way, the Seminoles might be good. That might be one thing.
I'm going to take the might be off the table. I think I think they're a good football team, maybe the best in the ACC.
Yeah, no question. And so I think that is going to be, there's no question it's gut check time for Alabama. Just a couple of years ago, this was a top 5 matchup. These two teams have gone back and forth in terms of national championships for a good while now. A little bit of a different situation as it pertains to being the two dominant teams in college football, because the landscape has changed, but the amount of eyes and the amount of attention and what can be won by winning this game there's no lackluster there. This is a huge opportunity for both teams.
Yeah, and I think even though LSU is the top team in the standings as it relates to SEC teams, these two are still considered the cream of the crop because these two have the championship pedigree and the history, as you mentioned. Now, there are 2 new coaches. There are 2 new quarterbacks in this football game, not from last year, but from previous years, obviously. And so I think with that, the names on the helmets and the jerseys still really matter as far as what they bring to this football team, this football game overall.
Sure.
But in my opinion, yes, I think this game will still go a long way to determining who comes out of the SEC, just like it will this year, just like it did in previous years when there were the East and West divisions.
Yeah, over on the other side, Gunnar Stockton is a name that it kind of came onto the radar late last year when there was an injury, of course, there at Georgia, and then we saw Gunnar go into the playoff games during the SEC championship game and do some positive things, and there's really been just a momentum shift for Georgia, for him at quarterback going into this season. Of course, they're undefeated. That notable game there in Tennessee a couple of weeks ago, Alabama and Georgia, but I want to make sure that we note, both was coming off the bye coming into this game. And when you think about that game against Tennessee, Kirby Smart was the first to say, we shouldn't have won this game. At the end of the day, I think it speaks to what this team is all about, that they can win games in situations on the road. Granted, they'll be at home this weekend, but they have that toughness about them. They have been there, done that experience. That's going to pay off, especially against an Alabama team that, like you just said, has that pedigree and has that experience in playing tough games down the stretch in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a top-down approach there. I mean, Kirby will say that this is all the players who shouldn't have won that game, but no, that's a mentality thing, to be able to go down big and be able to come back and give yourself a chance to win the game. Look no further than the Alabama-Georgia game just from last year. Bama goes up big. I think it was 30-7 at the half. And then Georgia claws their way back and gives themselves a chance. Bama ends up closing the door, but they give themselves a chance in Tuscaloosa. Now, the message for Kirby Smart is we cannot start in the hole like we've done in big games against Alabama last year and against Tennessee this past year. 2 different results, 1 game won, 1 game lost. However, it just shows you that it shows the guys on tape this past week that, hey, we cannot let Alabama jump out on us this year like we did last year.
Yeah, no question. And I think that for the Tide, you have to get off to a hot start. And that doesn't just mean offensively. It means getting stops early, being able to slow down Gunnar Stockton and all the weapons that he has there as well. Right now, 720 yards this season. He's completing balls at a 70% clip, which is impressive. Granted, they do have an SEC win. Because I know that Kirby wants to give all of the credit to the other side, naturally.
Absolutely.
But who have they played is I want to say a little bit just in terms of, like, have Alabama really had a quality opponent? We don't really know what Florida State was in that first week. So on the other end, there is that Gunnar Stockton element. And we did hear from Alabama defensive coordinator Kane Womack about gearing up for this QB1 there for the Bulldogs.
I think they do a really good job with Gunnar in the run game. It's just enough to keep you honest. You see the run game at the right time, certainly third downs and red zone, and those are things that will always be the case for offenses. But he's a physical kid. He's tough. He's gritty. He's willing to get the yards in the read game. He makes the right decisions the vast majority of the time. And so, he has certainly brought an element to their run game that, maybe they didn't have as much with Carson a year ago. And I think that's something that, that certainly we're going to have to account for.
So it's not like that's necessarily the first play call for what Georgia wants to do, but I think that Kane Womack said it best. They're going to keep you honest. He's carried the ball 28 times, 124 yards, and 3 touchdowns this season. So it's not like it's a balanced approach from the quarterback position, but it is one of those, hey, good decision making, trying to not turn the ball over, making the right decision. And on the other side, Alabama has had issues with quarterbacks who do get left alone and get an opportunity to get loose, especially in the middle of the field. Yeah,
they certainly do. And if you remember last year, one of the big safety nets for Jalen Milroe was Ryan Williams in the passing game. And I wonder how much that they'll rely on that this week, going into this week. But you mentioned it with Gunnar Stockton. He is not the main running threat that Carson Beck was last year, even though he does pose a threat there. But they have been bringing in all kinds of guys to help bolster that passing game. Zachariah Branch, who had a great game just a couple of weeks ago, and certain others that I think that if you're Kirby Smart, you feel like, yes, before we would just ground and pound, but now they feel like, hey, we can open things up a little bit here at home against this Alabama defense, and if we need to run the ball, we'll run the ball as well, and then test them the way Florida State tested them 3 weeks ago.
So before we go to break, because I know we have several guests coming up on the show, tell me, what does your betting mind say about a 2.5 point favorite for Georgia?
I think the line's just about right, because what this line is telling you is, and it's a little bit different depending on which book you're going with, but what the line is telling you is that on a neutral site, these two are basically even football teams, and it's almost a coin flip kind of game. So I think that any way that you bet here, you're not necessarily betting with strategy, you're kind of betting with hope that maybe whoever has the ball last will win the football game. And so if I'm betting, I'm probably live betting it based on the coin flip, who wins the coin toss, and then maybe just taking a chance on, hey, if this team won the coin toss, they'll defer in the second half, so then X team will have the ball. So Georgia will have the ball late, have a chance to win here. But the line, I think the line is very fair. They're telling you it's even teams here. And so I would stay away from an overall game bet. I would do more of a live bet than a game bet.
So that's what the betting side of you says in terms of like, hey, okay, looking at this in a black and white way. Do you feel like the broadcaster side of you says that the tail of the tape, 3 games in for these two teams going into the bye, not going into this game, says that these teams are even across the board when it comes to what they're able to put on the field offensively and defensively?
I think Alabama at its best and Georgia at its best, yes, they are even teams. I do like Alabama's trajectory right now, especially if they're able to get Jam Miller back and on the defensive side, be able to get Tim Keenan back. Both those guys have not played so far this season. This was the game they were targeting for Jam Miller. So if he can bring a true running threat with everybody else that they have in that backfield that has really been tested, and then on the defensive side, if they can have that Tim Keenan, that run stopper down there below, I think it really changes the dynamic of both the offense and the defense going into this one.
Really, really good points all across the board. Injuries or the lack thereof for Alabama going into this game certainly going to be a factor as they are getting guys on both sides of the ball back for the first time this season. Something to keep an eye on as we gear up for that big one, a night game in Athens between Georgia and Alabama.